Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. In today's show, we're going to focus on leadership and having the right processes to move your business forward. You can do all the marketing and advertising in the world, but without the right people in management, your business will still go downhill. What can we do to brand our practice such that our messages get heard and people react positively to how we want to serve them? Today's guest, Shirdan, is here to share with you all about that. The fact that he went through the Disney Institute together with the rest of his team to learn the 7 components of Disney's training greatly shows how much he values the customer's experience. So Shirdan is the founder of the Crew Process. He's been a practice manager and consultant for almost 20 years and has a lot of intimate knowledge with the world of dentistry. Since 1989, Andre has worked with thousands of practices helping to create systems for treatment planning, staff training, goal attainment, internal and external marketing, and computer systems integration. So first, here are a few things you're going to hear about today. Why did he start doing practice consultations? What are some of the things that the old practices do that he wishes the newer practices actually would follow? Are great leaders born or created? How to become a leader in your team that people would follow and respect? The best ways to implement new changes in a practice with staff that are resistant to change? And finally, if he was to start a new practice today, what would he do to build his business successfully? And so at the end of this episode, you'll find out where you can get a bonus, which is the STAT-CK protocol to create a hygiene crew that meets the needs of your patient flow with clinical excellence, correct insurance billing, and better production. And by the way, that STAT-CK, that stands for check. So it's like a stat check. So be sure to listen all the way through this entire interview to get access to that. Now, here's my interview with Shirdan. Hello, ambitious dentists. Today I have with us Shirdan. He is the president, CEO, founder, creator of the Crew Process. He's been a practice management consultant for over 20 years. He is, you could almost say he's like a tenured professor from Patterson Dental. So he has a lot of intimate knowledge with the world of dentistry. He's given his life to help you guys do better in your dental practices. He is a big champion of teamwork inside of dental practices, which if you know, one of my favorite sayings is that teamwork makes the dream work. So I'm very happy to have one with us today, Shirdan. Thank you so much for coming on, Andre.
Hey, John, it's great to be with you. It's good to finally see you face to face, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's pretty common. You see a Facebook profile jump up every once in a while, maybe my voice, the little monotone Arkansas slang coming in through the earbuds. So fantastic. So, Andre, tell us a little bit about you. You had recently had a very special Independence Day. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's funny. Everybody else was celebrating it for me. So on Independence Day, I retired from working with Patterson Dental. I had been working with them for the last 11 years, doing technology integration, working with them on some training for offices who wanted to integrate technology, CAD, CAM, digital X-ray software, those kind of things, and decided to just go back to where my heart was, and that was with consulting, teaching, coaching, and working one-on-one with the offices on those kinds of issues. And like you said, teamwork. I mean, I hate to use the word team, but that's what it is. It's teamwork.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about where that passion comes from. I think you have a compelling story with them.
Well, my story goes back, like you said, more than 20 years ago. About 27 years ago, my brother-in-law, who was my dentist, he wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, he was my dentist, asked me to come help him out with his practice. and the guy was pretty much bankrupt, and he needed help. And at the time, I was in retail, and I was doing probably about $750,000 in sales and retail, and had some business acumen that he wanted to learn. So I came into his practice to help him with the business of dentistry. I had no idea what the heck I was doing, but I knew how to run a business. And I was just blown away at first of all, the margins. I'm thinking, hey, for the effort this guy puts in, he could sell Avon and make more money, you know. And I thought, this business makes absolutely no sense. So I took it upon myself to learn everything there was to know about the business of dentistry, along with understanding a lot of the clinical. And he was a phenomenal teacher and really made me learn dentistry. So about a month after working with him, a couple of his buddies started calling me and asking me for help. And I had to start a company. I had to figure out a way to put the checks in my account. So I started a corporation and started systems practice management. And I honestly traveled the country. I went from Waterboro, Maine to Orlando, Florida, from Atlantic City to Sacramento, working with offices and helping them with putting systems in place, creating stronger crews, as I call them, and just finding the sort of the nugget that made the practice run, that philosophy issue that I always work on. So that's kind of how I got to this. And it's, like I said, it's been a 27-year ride and never looked back. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have in our audience, we didn't discuss this off camera, but most of our audiences are people that are starting a practice, going to start a practice, buying a practice, have recently came into owning a practice, things like that. Where do you feel like the ball is dropped most of the time in that transition of someone not being a business owner and then becoming a business owner? Now, that's a very specific question.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is, I think in this field, because they're put into the position of becoming the business leader, they make assumptions about business. They make assumptions about what it's going to be like to run a crew. They make assumptions about the ability to do both, be the manager and the engineer at the same time. And I think those assumptions tend to absorb the personality of the doctor. And a lot of what I see is people don't want to admit that they're failing, or they don't want to admit that they're not doing what their colleagues are saying they're doing. Of course, the colleagues are typically lying, and saying, hey, I'm doing $10 million out of 2 chairs. And we know that's not true. So I think a lot of it has to do with they get caught up in the day-to-day running of the practice and don't want to ask for help. And part of what I want every office to understand is that you should have an accountant, you should have an attorney, you should have somebody you talk to, even if it's your dad or your wife or somebody. You should have somebody you can bounce ideas off and get honest, true feedback, and what a coach would do. But a coach needs to be somebody who can stand on the sideline and not actually play in the game. They have to do that. So but I think that's what happens with a lot of new owners. They get bad advice. If it's advice that was paid for or advice that was given for some nebulous reason, and then they get caught up in the fact that they took that advice, they're running with that advice, and they won't leave it. And sometimes we need to let go of it and move on to something new.
So whenever we started this business, we had some docs that were very set in their ways. And that was one of the hardest things for us to ever be able to figure out how to do, is to be able to get someone to change how they're doing something when they've done it a certain way for a long period of time. Because it felt like it was almost like there was a correlation between the numbers of years of experience along with the willingness to change. The more experience they had, the less willing they are to change, which is one of the reasons we created a business that was, directed around helping new business owners. So do you believe in the whole, wait 6 months to do pretty much anything philosophy?
No, I like the idea, like in software, I like to develop fast and reiterate fast. I don't mind the fact that when I upload Windows 10, I'm going to get an update next week. I understand that it's constantly in beta. I want, and it's funny because I do a lot of presentations. And I'm in PowerPoint all the time. And sometimes I'll get an idea on an airplane. I build a slide, and that afternoon I'm presenting it. And guess what? Sometimes there's typos. Sometimes, the animation doesn't work right. But guess what? The idea is out there, and I'm going to reiterate it. And it's a constantly moving thing. So I like somebody to try something. A lot of what I do when I do coaching is, let's try this and let's see if it works. Because I'm from Philadelphia. What works in Philadelphia might not work in Arkansas, but at least let's try it. And then let's change it a little bit. There's a little difference in the accent. So let's try it, and then let's modify it. There's no such thing as a script, but there's a guideline that we can try. And ultimately, we come out with the same end result. Use it as a business analogy. The special sauce might be a little different, but it's still a Big Mac. So that's I like to reiterate, but still end up with the same kind of product.
I definitely agree with you. I mean, we have so many people that are, they feel like if they make one change, then if the smallest, pushback from their team or from patients or from revenue occurs, the practice is just over. I mean, we can just wipe our hands. We can all go home. The game's over. And I tell a lot of docs, like, look, in business, you're rarely, going to make these gigantic mistakes that just ruin everything. It's really about testing things and seeing what works, and then just avoiding the really big mistakes.
Yeah.
About testing and going through. So, what are some of the things that older practices versus newer practices? What are some of the things that you see in older practices that you wish, whenever someone comes in, could be turn it into a newer, well-trained, well-working teamwork type practice? Because the team doesn't change a lot in those acquisitions and things like that. Is there anything that you can give us guidance on of how to be able to be introduced to 6 or 7 strangers that have known each other for 20 years and have worked with each other for 20 years, and all of a sudden you're their leader?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and this happens for me on a daily basis. I go into an office as a coach, and typically the doctor has come to a seminar that I've done, and they've hired me. And now I show up, and now all of a sudden I'm the leader of this crew. And, I tell the story a million times. This actually happened to me. I actually got to an office, and I pull into I get in my rental car, I drive to the office, and I get in the parking lot, and the entire staff is in the parking lot. And I go, "Hi, I'm Andre, I'm here." And they said, "Yeah, well, we all quit." I said, "You did what?" They said, "Yeah, when they told us they hired a consultant, we quit." And I said,
"Oh my gosh."
"But you're all here." And they said, "Yeah, well, we're not leaving unless you leave." So, and we sat in that parking lot for probably 20 minutes talking it out about the fact that I was there to look at what they do and to tweak what they do. And what I try to explain to them is my job is to look at the office like white paint. And if I can drop a drop of black paint into a can of white paint, that paint's no longer white, but it's not really anything other than that. So if I could just add a little bit to what they're doing now, it changes what it is, but not dramatically. And, that got me to be part of the inside. And I said, I expect you guys to give me the info. And this is what I suggest to any new doctors. I've been doing this long enough that I've gone through a generation of clients. So I have offices that have new ownership. And a lot of it has to do with the doctor can't walk in and say, "Hey, I'm in charge now, and this is the way we're going to do things." It has to be, let's find out how you guys dance, and let me find out what your rhythm is. And then as I start to get in, I will start to take the lead for this dance. It has to be a transition, but it has to be a transition that shows that they are in leadership, but leaders don't always push. Sometimes they pull. So, it is a fine dance. but it has to be done in such a way that the entire crew understands that leadership is going to change. But leadership doesn't mean that life has to change. Change is good. And we're seeing it a lot with, I hate to say corporate dentistry, but corporate dentistry coming in is changing the landscape. And it's happening. Just left an office this morning where it's going to be a corporate office, and it's been, privately held for a long time. So interesting dynamics happening.
So as far as speaking to that leadership role, when people are put into that role, we've had guests on in the past that have talked about, and I'm a big believer of this, is that you give me a dentist that's a good leader, and you're going to have a successful dental practice over time. We've had some different views on, are great leaders born or are they developed? What are your thoughts of that? Is someone born a leader, or is that a skill?
I think it can be both. I think there are a lot of people who emerge as leaders, and there is a moment that happens in everyone's life that switch sometimes goes off. I had a car accident years ago that, if not for that car accident, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I've said it in seminars. It's that everybody should have a car accident once in their life. And I'm saying it metaphorically, but everybody should have that event once in their life that actually changes their perspective on things. And they go, guess what? I should be going in a different direction than I'm going now. And sometimes somebody who's not a leader finds leadership in a situation. And a lot of times with us in this field, sometimes it's about the fact that they're not making any money, and they've got major school debt that they've got to deal with, and sometimes they've got to become a leader. But leadership, when you say learned, leadership style is learned.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that can make or break you. You can't be the drill sergeant all the time, depending on your audience. If you're talking about the military, sure, you can be a drill sergeant, but leadership style is something that's learned. Leadership is something that's you're born with.
So how do you learn that part? Is it just experience? Is it just getting out there and working with your team and trying to become that leader? Is it something that you do, like you come in the first day and you save everyone from a fire and that makes you the leader or something like that?
Well, I think a lot of it for me is, when I go into an office, the first thing I ask is, tell me what your smile looks like. What does a patient that leaves your practice look like? What is it that you want to accomplish? And tell me what your philosophy of care is. And if they can succinctly describe that, then they can lead. If they have no outcome, if there's like, well, sometimes we do this, and sometimes I'll do amalgam, sometimes I do composites, I do removable sometimes, if that's what happens, then there is no leadership, and you're not going to be able to get your crew to follow you if you don't have a clear defined path. So a lot of it is just defining your leadership direction, and the rest happens organically. I think if everybody understands where you stand, you're going to have people, you're going to have a hygienist or an assistant who might say, what, that's not the boat I want to be on, and they get off. But that's okay. I mean, you're going to find somebody who will get on that boat with you and will travel with you and will row at the same pace. You have to be able to define that before you can become a leader. And that's, I saw it in my old company. We used to do everything for everyone. We would do all kinds of things, like we would build websites for customers. We would create logos for customers. And I realized, that's not our focus. But once we got on track and got on focus, then we became a stronger company. Mm-hmm. So, and the dental practices have to do the same thing. They've got to define the philosophy.
So you're saying, as far as when you're asking the doctor or the hygiene team, what does your product look like? What does the service that you're entailing? What's the end result? Is that what you're saying? That's how they define that?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. They have to be able to define what is periodontal condition in your practice. What is your definition of a bright white and tight smile, meaning high IQ, tight periodontally sound, and white meaning beautiful smile. If they can clearly define those three things, then they've got a product that they can sell. and they've got people who they can sell it to and people who can create that product. So, and everything I do is all about trying to help them define that philosophy of care. Otherwise, they're just going to have drawers and drawers and drawers full of product and, all kinds of different, geez, working with Patterson, it was wonderful because I got to see people buy things, which was kind of fun, but I got to see people who bought things just because they wanted to change what they were doing instead of understanding where they are and understanding where they want to go, not just buying a product.
So I want everyone out there that's listening right now to really think about that internally for a little while, because I think we're on something like the 40 in the 40s for our episodes, and we've had a lot of people talk about goals and talk about processes and talk about all these other things, but I think that very succinctly wraps up what you need to be moving your team towards of a defined product. And now when I say product, I mean, obviously that, what the end result of why these people are coming to you. I think that's a fantastic way to be able to get people behind things. Because when you talk about leadership, you got to be leading towards something.
Exactly.
And if you can define what you're leading towards, then you've got a roadmap at that point. Once you have a roadmap, you have, directions for people. And once they have directions, then you're going to be able to really, get the team going in the right direction. I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that put in that manner. So that's fantastic advice for everybody out there to listen to.
Yeah, I try to get all my clients, I ask them about what they feel is a great product. And some people will say, Titleist golf clubs or Callaway golf clubs, or they'll say, a Lamborghini, or they'll say Disney, we're talking about that, or Starbucks. And I say, okay, what makes that product or that place what it is? And when they break it down to what it is about the philosophy of the company. It's about the product they make. It's about the people who represent it. All right. And, in the process it takes to get it to that point. So if they can do that, we can break it into those 4 categories. We can make that happen in a dental practice easily. Yeah.
I love that. So what happens whenever you have a team and you've defined, I'm sorry, I think we're getting some bad weather here, so it may have some sound in the background. So what happens whenever you have a team that you've defined this end result of what your goal is for all the patients that are coming through the doors, and you have team members who are just set in their ways. Maybe they came from another practice, and they know how to do their job. Yeah. Like the group of people that you met in the parking lot that day.
Sometimes they're my favorite kind of people because, sometimes it takes just a little bit to change them, but sometimes it takes just a little bit to get them off your boat. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that when I say we, I mean the dental community, we fail to do is let people be successful someplace else. Sometimes we need to give them the push off the boat that they need. And again, I use the example of my brother-in-law. Here's a guy who loved dentistry, and he pulled a lot of dead weight along with him, and he didn't need to. And I see a lot of offices that have, I was in an office about a few months ago, and we went through this whole thing, and everybody was charged up. And I said, you guys must have another hygienist based on the amount of time you have. And they said, oh yeah, I'll just make up a name, Sally. She's not here today, but we didn't think she was going to come because she's really not into this kind of touchy-feely stuff. And I said, well, how are we going to get her on board? And they said, she's not going to be, but she's been around for a long time, and we just kind of let her be. And I said to the doctor, I turned to him in front of the rest of the staff, and I said, this has got to change. And he said, yeah, I've got to make a change. And I could see in his face the relief, because I guess I validated the fact that he needed to make a move. And she was gone the few days later, and you could have seen the sort of the black mourning clothing of the staff come off, and they all lit up, and they were fantastic. But he let this person run his practice to the ground for years. But it was time, and some people need to be successful someplace else. That's what it is. If you can't work at Disney, there's Universal down the street. It's okay.
As long as they'll hire you. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so that's great advice for you guys out there too. Remember that. There's so many people in this industry that I haven't really put my finger on it, and you probably could say it more succinctly than I can, but they just, like you said, they just feel like they know how to do things, and they're everyone is afraid of change. I guess I think that's a natural human condition for most people. I think that entrepreneurs and business owners understand and embrace that change sometimes. But a lot of staff members, they just want to go to work and they just want to do their job, and they want today to be a lot like yesterday, because as soon as 5 o'clock gets there, they can go home and they can do whatever they want. Yeah. Everybody as a business owner doesn't really want that employee. They want the employee that does what they're going to do, and they want to do it successfully, and they want to help their family, and they want to be a part of the team, and they want to do all these other things. But there's a lot of people out there that are bad apples, and there's a whole lot of good apples too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I use something that I call practice par. And what practice par is, and you're a numbers guy, you'll appreciate this. We know, based on industry standards, that there's certain things that should happen in every practice. Payroll should be 25, 30%. You should be given 6% to your supply company. You should be given 6% to your dental labs, et cetera, et cetera. So we know all these kind of norms. And if we work backwards, just like a golf course has par, it's a par 4, so I should hit the ball in 4 shots to get it in. So every golf course has a par, so every practice should have a par. Based on the zip code, based on what your fees are, we should know what the practice makes. So if we look at what the practice makes, we should know what the practice gives to Patterson, Shine, Benco, et cetera, et cetera. We should know what payroll should be. We should know what all these numbers should be. And if they're not, then they're outside. They're hitting under par. All right. So what we need to, or over par. So what we need to be able to do is say to a staff member, this has nothing to do with you. It's not personal. This has to do with the norms that we expect for a position. This has to do with things that are just general. We just, there's no personality involved at this. This is just the business. And we have to meet those norms in order to go forward. I like to just let them be their own, consultants. Consulting is the numbers. The coaching is the motivation. So let them be their own consultants. Let them look at the numbers. Let them find out how to do it better. And I love when somebody comes to me and says, I love what you do with X, Y, or Z, but I'd like to tweak it in this way. Great, you've taken ownership of it. Let's do it. And then let's see how it affects the numbers. If it does, we all celebrate. If it doesn't, we tweak it and we try again. So my thing is, I love for people to take ownership of something and create it in their own way. And then I can just stand back on the sidelines and cheer them on and coach them on and move it on and then monitor it so that the next month we can do better, or we can change it and change it to a different direction. So
I love that process. Most consultants don't take that line of thought, I believe. And so that's a breath of fresh air to me. Most people come in when I have clients that have hired consultants, they'll come in and they'll have all these pieces of paper and these forms and these things that people fill out, and they fill it out at the end of the day. They send it to the consultant. The consultant says, well, the reason is because we're not doing it specifically this way. And if you don't adapt this specific manner of doing things, if you don't, adopt this specific process, then the practice, that's the reason that we're not doing well.
Yeah.
I love that it's because every person is different. Every team is different. A team is based off of a number of different personalities, and like I said, what works in Philadelphia may not work in Arkansas. I mean, there's some core competencies that we all have to know. Like, we know that we have to be sure that our phone skills are really good. We know we have to have good phone skills. We know that we have to make sure that our hygiene visits are getting reappointed. The way in which we get that result is not parallel in every single practice. I feel so many people get that wrong. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, and that's what my model has always been, and it's been very strange because for me, I walk into an office and I'm usually not the first consultant in, and they're usually thinking, Well, they're apprehensive. They're thinking, okay, I'm going to have to pay this guy $50,000 to do X, Y, or Z. And my approach to this process was the same approach in 27 years later, is the same approach I had with my brother-in-law. I walked into his office and I said, I'll help you if you'll do this crown, number 18, for me. And he said, okay, sure, that's fine. I'll do the crown. You work with me for a month. And I said, okay, that's good. How much did you charge for a crown? And let's just say for round figures. He said $1,000. I said, okay, that's my fee. And to this day, it's exactly what I charge, whatever the doctor charges for a crown. And guess what? It's fair, because if I'm in, San Diego and it's a $3,000 crown, or if I'm in Camden, New Jersey and it's $750 for a crown, guess what? It's fair. It's the fair amount of money. And that made it such that it's a month-to-month commitment, and it also keeps it realistic. Because guess what? If you're not getting results, if you're not paying a coach out of your profits, you're doing something wrong. You should never be paying somebody out of your pocket. It should always be out of profits. So, it's all about being fair, and it's all about finding a way to move the practice forward. But you know what? Sometimes, like we talked about, it's slow right now. Maybe it's sometimes you take a break. You take a break from consultancy. I don't have an accountant with me full time. I don't have an attorney with me full time. So guess what? When it gets busy in the fall, we bring somebody back in and we have them coach them on different things. We have a hygiene coach who works with our hygiene department. It has to be organic, and it has to be something that the office can get benefits from. So that's the way I see it. It has to be.
And so how does your process work whenever you have a new client come on?
Usually what I do is, I'll talk to the doctors for a long time, and I'll, my cell number rings constantly, texting and phones. I ask the doctor to give my number out to everybody in the office, and I let them call me, and they can typically just vent. I build relationships with people, and then when I go into an office, I can do an analysis of the practice, but I can do an analysis literally by asking the office 3 questions. If I can get 3 numbers from the office, which are not, I can get them typically if I call the office. They're not invasive questions. If I can get those 3 numbers, I can do an entire practice analysis. So I don't need any history. And history is filled with buts. If I say, so show me your numbers, they're going to say, well, yeah, but I broke my arm in 2012. So the numbers are going to, so that, I don't know, the quote, something like history's not a reflection of the future, or something to that effect. I don't really look at the numbers. I look at where the office wants to go. So typically I ask the doctors, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Do you want to spend more time at home? Do you want to golf more? Do you want to spend more time with your family? Are there mission trips that you want to go on? Tell me what you want to do and how I can get you to that point. And then I work backwards from there. And a lot of it is, sometimes it's crying it out with the doctors and saying, hey, look, you've got to stand up and do this, or you've got to be able to do this, or you've got to fire Becky, or you've got to get Sally to collect more money. A lot of it is just teaching leadership, like we talked about. So my style is, I don't have one. It's really, it's organic. A lot of it changes with each client. I have clients who, 30 years later, still send me a check every month just so they can make phone calls with me. And I have clients who I go into the office. I've been to an office 3 times this month. They're close by, but I've been there 3 times this month just because they require a little more handholding. So it's all organic, and it's there is no cookie cutter. The cookie cutter is the end result. I want a square, or I want a diamond shaped cookie, or I want a round, chocolate chip cookie in the end. But how we bake it could be different from everybody. Somebody's gluten free, and somebody can't have sugar, and somebody needs aspartame and all that. It can be different for everybody, but the end result is a cookie.
Very interesting. Tell me what happened whenever as an end result at that practice you came in and the staff was sitting outside. I want to hear the result. We teased it earlier.
I worked with them for about 10 years afterwards, continuously. We became really good friends. Most of the doctors I've ever worked with, I called my friends, because they are or were clients, but I built friendships. But the staff, I'm still really good friends with the staff. They became phenomenal. Their numbers went up to the point where they were doing what they should be doing. I never taken glory in saying the office doubled, tripled, whatever. They did what they should have been doing. based on the skill of the doctor, the location of the practice, that kind of stuff. They did very, very well. And that doctor is in the process of transitioning to a new owner. So I'm going through the process of helping that new owner with his his take on things, and we're defining where he's going to go. They all stayed. I know. I think we lost one person from that original revolt. They all came back in. We spent for about 20 minutes, a half hour in the parking lot. And I said, well, you want to get pizzas out here or whatever? I wasn't going to let it drop. And they all came back in. We all got back on the same page, and they became phenomenal clients.
I love it. I love that story. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Should have gotten a picture. If it had been the world of selfies, I'm sure there'd have been a picture of you smiling with them with the sour looks on all their faces for you taking a picture.
Yeah.
There we go. So as far as I ask a lot of people this, and you're not a dentist, but you have obviously many lifetimes of dental experience in your head. If today you were starting a practice, how would you go about that?
I use this every day when I do a presentation. This is what I tell every office that I work with. If I were opening a practice right now, it would look very much as if Disney opened up a practice. All right. And I have a mock-up that I did. I am a Photoshop nut. So I actually created this fictitious practice. Please don't sue me with Disney, but I created this fictitious practice called Disney Dentistry. And I tell every audience that I work with, what would happen if I opened a practice across from you called Disney Dental, and they got the same level of customer service that they would at Disney, and they took every plan, and the crew was phenomenal, and the experience was phenomenal, but the dentistry was the same. And I use that every time, and that's exactly what I would do. I would build Disney Dentistry, and it would be an experience to go to, and patient loyalty would go up. The fees would not be an issue because they would be in line with what the reasonable customer were for the area. But that's what it would look like, and it would have technology that made sense. I'll say that while I'm biting the corner of my lip, and it would have technology that made sense in the hands of the clinicians who were using it, and everything would be done in such a way that the language of that practice was all branded to that practice, so that there's so much out there that we do and say that only works inside the dental world, and we try to lay those same words and the same terminology to our patients, and we're losing them. It's sad, but that's what my practice would look like, and I'd pop one in every neighborhood I could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had Dr. Tom Larkin on recently, and he said something very similar to that. He said I would open up shop right next door to a big corporate company like Aspen Dental, and I would make it just the best experience you could have, and have it be very relationship driven. Yeah. Just because the bigger corporate companies they thrive off of transactional natures, and you have this opportunity to become a relationship nature, which is going to be so much stronger over the long run. Yeah. So I like that a lot. So great. You've been very generous with your time today. We really appreciate your process. If someone wants to reach out, if they have any questions for you or anything like that, what's a good way for someone to be in contact?
So easiest way, and like I said, my cell phone rings continuously. I love talking to people. So give me a call on my cell. My cell is 484-437-5562. My website is thecrewprocess.com, crewprocess.com. That's a great resource, easy way to get in touch with me. And email Andre Syst, SYST, at comcast.net. Or get me on my Facebook page. That's kind of I live on Facebook now. And it's facebook.com/Shirdan, SHIRDAN.
Okay, was that ANDRESYST at comcast.net or .com?
.net. Yep. .net.
Fantastic. Well, Andre, you've been a great guest. We absolutely thank you for your time and for your commitment to the dental industry. I know you are, just like myself, committed to making sure that dentists don't don't pay a lot of money for the bad advice out there. So I definitely feel like we're kindred spirits in that. And so again, we appreciate your time, and I hope all the best. Have a good day.
My pleasure.
A special thanks to Andre Shirdan for sharing his insights as a practice manager as well as a consultant. As you've heard, the right leaders and team can make or break a practice's cash flow. And as a bonus for you today, you can access the bonus, which is the StatCK protocol, to create a hygiene crew that meets the needs of your patient flow with clinical excellence, correct insurance billing, and better production. So to get that bonus, simply visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus. You'll also receive updates on the latest episodes of Start Your Dental Practice, helpful tips for owning and running a practice, and promotional opportunities direct to your inbox. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.